Let's start with a quote that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. If he loves, he ceases to be what he is. The man who said that? Arthur Schopenhauer. And this isn't just some edgy quote for a social media post. This was the foundation of his entire worldview. Think about it. There comes a moment in a lot of men's lives, a quiet, soul-splitting moment, when you feel the first crack in the illusion. You look at the things you once chased with this blind devotion, love, companionship, that perfect dream of a future shared with someone who just gets you, someone who whispers promises of understanding. But what if it's all a lie? Arthur Schopenhauer didn't just question it, he took a sledgehammer to it. This was a man who peered into the dark, grinding machinery of human desire and refused to look away. For him, romance wasn't your salvation. It was a seduction, a trap set by nature itself, a beautifully wrapped prison designed for one purpose. What the world celebrates as love, he called a delusion. What we're told is intimacy, he revealed as raw biology dressed up in the robes of fantasy. And what you think is a deep, soulful connection, he saw it for what he believed it truly is, suffering in disguise. According to Schopenhauer, the fundamental difference between men and women wasn't just physical, it was metaphysical. It was a difference in their very mode of being. He argued that man, by his nature, strives for the abstract, for ideals, for grand philosophies, for art, for creation. He's reaching for something beyond the horizon. Woman, he said, cleaves to the immediate, the practical, the survivalist instinct. He famously wrote that women remain children their whole lives. They never see anything except what is closest to them, cleave to the present moment, take the appearance of a thing for reality. Now, before you click away, understand this. In his mind, this wasn't an insult. It was an observation. It was his lens for viewing the mind of nature itself, working through two different types of agents to achieve its goals. So then, what is beauty? That intoxicating force that can bring a man to his knees. According to Schopenhauer, it's a mask, nothing more. It's biological bait, precision engineered to seduce, to disarm, and ultimately to capture the mind of a man. He believed a woman's beauty wasn't some gift to the world. It was a tool, a weapon meant to weaken a man's judgment, to pull him away from his higher pursuits and reduce him to a servant of his own biological urges. And damn, does it work. Time and time again, men, builders of empires, shapers of history, warriors of principle, have fallen. Not to invading armies, not to superior ideas, but to the soft voice and the gentle touch of a woman they could never, in his view, truly understand. Schopenhauer argued that since women historically lacked the brute force to shape the world directly, they mastered the art of subtlety. Their power was quiet, but incredibly effective. It wasn't an influence wielded on the battlefield, but in the bedroom, in the household, and over the very desires of men. Where men built the world, women, he claimed, shaped the men who built it, through charm, through emotion, through leveraging need. And yet, society romanticizes this. We call it love. We pretend it's sacred. But to Schopenhauer, it was a transaction dressed up in poetry, a biological imperative cloaked in sacred vows. Love, he wrote, is not what it appears to be. It's not the meeting of souls or the fated destiny of two hearts. It is a trick played on us by what he called the will to life, the blind, unconscious force of nature that is just acting through us to continue the species. And here's the kicker. This force does not care about your peace of mind. It doesn't care about your personal happiness, your ambitions, or your life's purpose.
It only cares that you reproduce. And to achieve that one single goal, it will whisper fantasies into your heart and project illusions through your eyes. It tells you, she's different. It convinces you, this time it's real. And by the time you see the truth, you've already surrendered. You're already caught.
For Schopenhauer, marriage wasn't the sacred bond we're told it is. It was the final act in a man's downfall, a legally binding illusion, a contract signed with hope but often paid for in a lifetime of regret. He believed that once a man fully succumbs to the spell of beauty and the promise of connection, he is no longer free. Marriage, in this cold, hard light, isn't about love. It's a biological strategy that nature uses to ensure reproduction is a sure thing. And the man, blinded by emotion, is reduced to a beast of burden. He works. He sacrifices. He bends his entire will, not for glory, not for meaning, not for his own grand purpose, but to sustain a structure that more often than not leaves him feeling empty, drained, and chained. And when the initial magic wears off, when the beauty that once captivated him fades, when the enchantment of the chase is over, what's left? Often, it's resentment, a heavy silence, a quiet, creeping disillusionment. The very freedom he once possessed, the freedom to think, to create, to roam the world in search of his own truth, is replaced. It's swapped out for duty, responsibility, and a soul-crushing routine. Schopenhauer put it bluntly, marriage is a trap set by nature, the will to live wrapped in a beautiful illusion, and the bait? A woman's smile, her softness, the promise of finally being understood. But beneath it all, he argued, is just instinct, survival, repetition. Now, it's crucial to understand this. This isn't hatred. This is a warning. He didn't see women as villains in this story. He saw them as unconscious agents of nature's grand design. Their goal isn't personal malice. It's the fulfillment of their own biological imperative to seek security, to ensure their own survival and the survival of their offspring. And to achieve this, Schopenhauer claimed women developed a superior skill set, but not in the areas men value. Not logic, not brute strength, but in emotional influence, persuasion, cunning, a powerful intuition that operates on a completely different frequency. And it's in this space, this emotional battlefield, where so many men lose. Not because they are weaker, but because they are utterly unaware of the game being played. They show up with a rulebook of logic to a realm that is ruled by pure instinct. They try to reason where they should, perhaps resist. Schopenhauer saw that in this arrangement, men often become pawns in their own lives. They build the house, but it's no longer truly theirs. They strive and climb the ladder in their careers, only to hand over the fruits of their labor. They hold on to their dreams, but those dreams become diluted, watered down by the immense weight of obligation. And all the while they convince themselves that this is fulfillment, that the sacrifice is noble, that it's necessary, that this is what it means to be a man. But beneath the surface, many feel that gnawing ache of something lost. A voice inside them they no longer hear, a fire that no longer burns, a version of themselves that has been buried under layers and layers of compromise. He warned of this fate, not to condemn women, but to awaken men, to force their eyes open to the powerful forces at play, to see through the veil of romance before it's too late. He was speaking to men not as enemies of women, but as seekers of truth, because in Schopenhauer's philosophy, it is not woman that destroys man. It is man's ignorance of woman. It's his own romanticized delusions, his failure to understand what really drives the dance of attraction and what that dance so often costs him.
The tragedy, then, isn't that men love. It's that they love blindly. It's that they give their soul away to an idea they never really questioned, that they confuse raw desire for cosmic destiny and seduction for sincerity. And when the illusion finally shatters, when reality comes crashing in, they are left with more than just broken hearts. They are left with broken lives. Schopenhauer's brilliance wasn't in his bitterness. It was in his brutal clarity. He stripped away all the sentiment, all the poetry, and exposed the raw, unfiltered machinery of nature that drives us all, whether we want to see it or not. He saw men not as oppressors, but as victims of their own deepest longing. Men, he argued, are noble by nature. They are rational, driven, builders of thought and civilization. They erect empires, they paint masterpieces, they solve the riddles of science and wrestle with the great philosophical questions of existence. But all of it, every single achievement, every ounce of progress, is vulnerable to a total collapse the moment a man surrenders his reason to unchecked desire. Because once a man falls under that spell, he begins to serve, not his purpose, but hers. He becomes willing to sacrifice his mission for the approval of one person. He starts to compromise his core values for a little bit of comfort. He reshapes his entire identity to be more palatable, more agreeable, more desirable. And in doing so, he forgets who he is. Schopenhauer saw this as the most tragic betrayal of all. Not a betrayal of society, not of some abstract principle, but a betrayal of the self. What is the worth of a man who forgets himself? What happens to his spirit when he no longer lives for his own truth, but for someone else's validation?
Schopenhauer observed that many men are not broken by hardship, or war, or poverty. They are broken by love, or rather, by the illusion of it, by the soft, slow-acting poison of dependency. And it is here, he argued, that women, consciously or not, hold the real power. Because they don't need to dominate with force. They dominate through need, through presence, through charm, through silence. They rarely have to demand obedience. Men offer it freely. They rarely have to ask for sacrifice. Men volunteer it eagerly. And so begins the slow erosion. First, it's the time he once gave to his ambitions. Then, it's the fire that once burned for his craft. Then, it's the precious solitude that once gave birth to his best ideas. One by one, these pillars fall, until the man who once stood tall is now kneeling, not in reverence, but in resignation. His purpose becomes maintenance. His joy becomes avoidance. His dreams shrink to accommodate someone else's comfort. And still, the world celebrates this. They call it maturity, responsibility, even love. But Schopenhauer challenges us to ask the hard question: what if it's not growth, but surrender? What if the man who gives up his fire isn't evolving, but fading away? He believed the truly awakened man sees beyond these illusions. He doesn't hate women, he understands their nature. He doesn't reject love, but he sees it for what it is, a powerful force of nature to be respected, not worshipped. And most importantly, he protects his soul from being consumed by the very things that once promised him happiness, but only brought distraction.
This isn't a call to isolation. It's a call to awareness. To take a step back and ask yourself, am I the man I was meant to be? Or have I become someone else for the sake of peace, for attention, for a little bit of fleeting pleasure? Schopenhauer's voice isn't one of anger. It's a warning, a quiet but unrelenting truth. echoing through the generations, calling men back to themselves before it's too late. In Schopenhauer's world, the highest form of man is not the lover, or the husband, or even the warrior. It is the philosopher, the one who sees the game for what it is and chooses not to play by its rules, the one who turns away from the noise, from the seduction, from the applause of others, and instead faces the silence within himself. He believed that only through detachment could a man ever be truly free. Only by renouncing the illusion of fulfillment through another person could he begin to understand his own true nature. He pointed to the great men of solitude, the Buddhas, the Stoics, the saints and sages who walked alone, not because they were unloved, but because they were unwilling to trade their inner peace for momentary affection. They saw through the mirage of romantic salvation. They chose wisdom over warmth, clarity over comfort. And it was in that solitude, Schopenhauer argued, that a man finds real power, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that reclaims the self.
This path is not for everyone. Most will reject it. Society will call it cold, detached, even bitter. But Schopenhauer didn't write for the masses. He wrote for the few, for the men who are ready to see, the men who have suffered enough to finally ask, why? The ones who have chased love, lost themselves in the process, and now seek something real, not validation, not comfort, but truth. And the truth is this: a man who does not understand his own desires is ruled by them. A man who does not understand women is vulnerable to them. And a man who builds his identity on the promises of romance will watch that identity collapse the moment those promises are broken. Schopenhauer challenges every man to ask, are you awake, or are you just dreaming someone else's dream? This isn't a rejection of love. It's a call to love differently, to love your own mind, to love your purpose, to love the stillness that speaks when the rest of the world goes quiet. Because the man who can sit alone with his own thoughts and feel no hunger, no longing, no ache for something more, that is the man who cannot be controlled. That is the man who is truly free.